I have awakened in thy shelter, oh my God, and it becometh him that seeketh that shelter to abide within the sanctuary of thy protection and the stronghold of thy defense. Illumine my inner being, oh my Lord, with the splendors of the day spring of thy revelation, even as thou didst illumine my outer being with the morning light of thy favor. Illumine my inner being, oh my Lord, with the splendors of the day spring of thy revelation, even as thou didst illumine my outer being with the morning light of thy favor. I always like to confess to my mistakes. I got off at a little point in there. I saw that look on your face, Nene, like, what just happened? What just happened? Good morning, everyone. You're saying I'm not loud enough. Is that better? Say that again. I'm getting some direction here, folks. Hang on. Is the guitar, it's too loud? Oh, it wasn't loud enough. You're saying it wasn't loud enough. You know, the worst thing about, what's worse than having your producer director give you directions in real time is when they do it while rolling their eyes. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well and staying warm wherever you are. If you're seeing this in real time, or if you're seeing it, after we actually do this program. I say that because it's a little chilly here right now. At least this morning it was in the 30s. I don't know what it is now. I know that there are some people out there that are used to that. This is Florida. I personally am not used to it. I'll just leave it at that. And as you can see, I'm here by myself. Daryl, unfortunately, is not feeling well. He's a bit under the weather. But last week, when we didn't do our program last week, we had several people sick, which I shared on Facebook. And a lot of people said, I hope you get well soon. I didn't want to go into detail. I wasn't the one who was sick. We had some other folks, our tech guy, Jeremiah, who helps us out so much every single Sunday. He was sick and Daryl was sick and I actually was out of town. So all that together made us decide, let's just wait until next week. I want to say good morning to everyone. Good morning, Canbiz, and good morning, Simone, and good morning, Janet and Husham, and good morning, Andy, and good morning, everyone out there in Facebook land. And we are going to go ahead, as always, and start with a prayer. Hang on. We're having a little issue here. 1 second. Right. What's going on here? Oh, it's upside down. There we go. Okay, now we're good. So let me grab my prayer book, and this is a prayer. We have lots of, one thing I love about the writings of the Baha'i Faith and all of the supported books that we have. There is a prayer book, which you'll often see Baha'is have, or some people access it online. But if you see the hard copy, it's always a little small, either black or usually sometimes dark green prayer book. And it has prayers in there from the Bab and from Baha'u'llah and Abdul Baha. But most of the prayers that I read in our program are from Baha'u'llah, because it's actually from a compilation of Baha'u'llah's writings, and the compilation is called The Writings of Baha'u'llah. So this is a prayer from Baha'u'llah. I give praise to thee, O Lord my God. I entreat thee by thy name, through which thou didst cause the dawn to appear and the winds to blow, and the seas to surge, and the trees to bring forth their fruits, and the earth to be beautified with its rivers, that thou wilt aid them that are dear to thee with both thy visible and invisible hosts. Render them, moreover, victorious over all those who have so rebelled in thy land, and dishonored thy name, and disbelieved in thy signs, and broken thy covenant, and cast behind their backs thy laws, and have to such an extent risen up against thee, that they carried into captivity thy kindred, and flung the manifestation of thyself into prison, and immured him who is the dayspring of thine essence in the most desolate of cities. Thou, O my Lord, art he whose strength is immense, whose decree is terrible. Lay hold on thine adversaries by the power of thy sovereignty, and assemble thy loved ones beneath the shadow of the tree of thy oneness, that they may stand before thy throne and catch the accents of thy voice, and gaze on thy beauty, and discover the power of thy might. Thou art verily the all-powerful, the Almighty. And again, this is a prayer from Baha'u'llah. Good morning, Adam. Good morning, Pharaoh. Now, I chose this prayer rather arbitrarily, I'll admit, but upon closer reading, it really fits with our readings for today. Now, to remind everyone, we started a new book just a couple of weeks ago, and the book is One Common Faith. One Common Faith. It is a book. I'm giving it to Nini so she can show it on our Facebook streaming cameras, which are our phones. So, and it's hard to talk without the book. So just give me a moment here while she does her thing. Okay, but this is a book, just to remind anyone or to tell anyone who might be joining us for the first time, this is a book that is written, that was written in 2005. It's actually a letter to various leaders of the world, religious and governmental leaders of the world. And it was sent out from the Universal House of Justice, the supreme governing body of the Baha'i Faith. And basically, they're expressing concern. And the concern that they're expressing is based on this view and based on the reality that, as they point out, that number one, obviously there's a lot of turmoil in the world. At that time there was, and there still continues to be. And the opinion that is being expressed is that the dominant world faith in today's world is indeed not what we think of as religion, but the dominant world faith has become materialism. Now, the way that we talked about that last week, I'll admit that even I gave what was probably too limited a view of what is meant by that. Okay, I'm going to just read just a slight, let's see. Here it is. Early in the 20th century, a materialistic interpretation of reality had consolidated itself so completely as to become the dominant world faith insofar as the direction of society was concerned. And frankly, my interpretation of that was, just again, this materialism, this idea of amassing, goods and so forth and building wealth. Excuse me, while it does include that, that is a much too limited view of what that means. Again, this materialistic interpretation of reality. There is actually a philosophy called scientific materialism that was popular, and it basically denies or disregards the existence of God, and it looks at us and existence as purely physical. And you can see why that mindset would lead to the emphasis on, let's say, developing the physical, nurturing the physical, even as far as our personal selves are concerned. And another thing that was pointed out, and pardon me, is just that it's been 2 weeks since we've read this, and so I feel it's important that we kind of bring ourselves up to snuff. Here's another thing that was pointed out. Society as a whole proceeded with growing confidence to sever dependence on a conception of the universe that was judged to be at best a fiction and at worst an opiate. Now, when it says to sever dependence on a conception of the universe that was judged to be at best a fiction and at worst an opiate, what they were referring to is belief in God or the existence of God being at best either fiction or simply an opiate. And as we pointed out, that idea of an opiate, it's like a drug. It makes you feel good, but as Andy also pointed out when we were discussing this before, it makes you feel good, but it does you a lot of harm. And so think about that. The idea of God being at best a fiction or an opiate, something that feels good, but does more harm than good. It says humanity had taken its destiny into its own hands. It had solved through relational experimentation and discourse, in other words, through communication. It had solved through rational experimentation and discourse. So people were given to believe all of the fundamental issues related to human governance and development. It had solved through rational experimentation and discourse all of the fundamental issues related to human governance and development. And so hopefully you can see why, if we look at it, number one, no, we haven't. And number two, probably not going to be able to solve all of humanity's problems if we simply base it on this idea of a purely materialistic existence. So that's where we left off. And we're going to continue now. And again, I apologize that Daryl's not here to stop me. Maybe Nini or anyone else that wants to say, okay, you're going on a little too long, Tony. But it's just that some of these concepts are rather, they're pretty deep, and some of the language is rather complex. So let's begin. This posture that we just discussed, this posture was reinforced by the assumption that the values, ideals, and disciplines cultivated over the centuries were now reliably fixed and enduring features of human nature. Fixed not meaning repaired, but set. Okay? The ideals and disciplines cultivated over the centuries were now reliably fixed and enduring features of human nature. And you don't need it anymore. We're done. We're good. They needed merely to be refined by education and reinforced by legislative action. All those things needed merely to be refined by education and reinforced by legislative action. The moral legacy of the past was just that, humanity's indefeasible inheritance requiring no further religious interventions. Now, what is an indefeasible inheritance? I had to look that up. I knew inheritance, but indefeasible? Well, guess what indefeasible means for anyone who, like me, might not know. When something is indefeasible, it means you can't lose it. It cannot be annulled. It cannot be overturned. It's there to stay. And so the view is, again, the moral legacy of the past was just that. Humanity's indefeasible inheritance requiring no further religious interventions. Admittedly, undisciplined individuals, groups, or even nations would continue to threaten the stability of the social order and call for correction. Okay, so they're, in other words, they're admitting, if you held that view that, our religious inheritance was indefeasible, there would still be some outliers. Okay. The moral legacy of the past was just that, humanity's indefeasible inheritance requiring no further religious interventions. Admittedly, undisciplined individuals, groups, or even nations would continue to threaten the stability of the social order and call for correction. The universal civilization towards the realization of which all the forces of history had been bearing the human race, however, in other words, all that build of the development of mankind was irresistibly emerging, inspired by secular conceptions of reality. I'm going to read that whole thing again. I know it's, again, bear with me, but this is such an important concept. The universal civilization, the world civilization, towards the realization of which all the forces of history had been bearing the human race. In other words, all of this is culminating into one final product. The universal civilization towards this realization of which all the forces of history had been bearing the human race was, however, was irresistibly emerging, inspired by secular conceptions of reality. People's happiness would be the natural result of better health, better food, better education, better living conditions, and the attainment of those unquestionably desirable goals now seemed to be within the reach of a society single-mindedly focused on their pursuit. Notice how all those things really are, they're really physical. And the mention of spiritual development or connection to any idea of spiritual existence or divinity is not even in there. Okay? The universal civilization was irresistibly emerging, inspired by secular conceptions of reality. Again, those things are people's happiness. And all of those things, of course, we have to admit they're important. But people's happiness would be the natural result of better health, better food, better education, better living conditions. And the attainment of these unquestionably desirable goals now seem to be within the reach of a society single-mindedly focused on their pursuit. Throughout that part of the world, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little bit of a spoiler alert. Everyone in the world was not and is not experiencing the benefits of these things that have just been listed. And we're going to cover that now. Throughout the part of the world where the vast majority of the Earth's population lived, facile announcements, meaning superficial announcements, superficial or facile announcements that God is dead, had passed largely unnoticed. Okay? Throughout that part of the world where the vast majority of the Earth's population lives. Well, where is that part of the world? The experience of the peoples of Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Pacific had long confirmed them in the view not only that human nature is deeply influenced by spiritual forces, but that its very identity is spiritual. Those nations that we listed, those regions of the world that we listed, that's where most of the people live. Okay, where the vast majority of the Earth's population lives. The experience of the peoples of Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Pacific had long confirmed them in the view that, had long confirmed them in the view not only that human nature is deeply influenced by spiritual forces, but that its very identity is spiritual. That's a pretty profound statement, but notice that it said had long confirmed them in this view. Not only that human nature is deeply influenced by spiritual forces, but that its very identity is spiritual. Consequently, in those regions, I'm adding in those regions, religion continued, as had always been the case, to function as the ultimate authority in life. Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Pacific. I'm going to take my glasses off because I'm having some problems because of them right now. Okay. These convictions again about the importance of religion, while not directly confronted by the ideological revolution taking place in the West, and that ideological revolution, once again, was a shift to materialism. Again, early 1900s. These convictions, while not directly confronted by the ideological revolution taking places in the West, were effectively marginalized by it. In other words, this materialistic view kind of started even in those regions, pushing aside the view of the importance placed on the spiritual part of our identity. These convictions were effectively marginalized by, again, the shift to materialism, insofar as interaction among peoples and nations was concerned. In other words, even there, materialism started taking over. Having penetrated and captured all significant centers of power, this is important. Listen to this. If you haven't been listening yet, listen to this. Having penetrated and captured all significant centers of power and information at the global level, dogmatic materialism ensured that no competing voices would retain the ability to challenge projects of worldwide economic exploitation. Dogmatic materialism, in other words, total just being dedicated to this idea of materialism. Dogmatic materialism ensured that no competing voices, no other viewpoints, would retain the ability to challenge projects of worldwide economic exploitation. The emphasis is now placed on making money, economic exploitation. To the cultural damage already inflicted by 2 centuries of colonial rule was added an agonizing disjunction between the inner and outer experience of the masses affected, a condition invading virtually all aspects of life. Now, I don't know about you, but I did not know what disjunction meant. I thought I knew. Turned out I was wrong about what I thought about it. So the word disjunction means a lack of correspondence or consistency. Now let's think about what that sentence is saying. To the cultural damage already inflicted by this, again, adherence to dogmatic materialism, this viewpoint, to the cultural damage already inflicted by 2 centuries of colonial rule. We don't even need to talk about that. By 2 centuries of colonial rule was added. In other words, if that's not bad enough, what was added to it? An agonizing disjunction, a lack of correspondence or consistency between the inner and outer experiences of the masses affected, a condition invading virtually all aspects of life. Yeah, we want to have a spiritual, we want to nurture ourselves spiritually, we want to emphasize that, but we're being surrounded by materialism. I mean, imagine living that existence. Helpless to exercise any real influence over the shaping of their futures, or even to preserve the moral well-being of their children, these populations were plunged into a crisis different from, but in many ways even more devastating than the one gathering momentum in Europe and North America. Although retaining its central role in consciousness, faith appeared impotent to influence the course of events. As this, this snowballing effect of materialism takes over, faith appeared impotent to influence the course of events. As the 20th century approached its close, therefore, nothing seemed less likely than a resurgence of religion as a subject of consuming global importance. Yet, this is precisely what has now occurred in the form of a groundswell of anxiety and discontent. People just aren't happy. A groundswell of anxiety and discontent. Much of it still only dimly conscious of the sense of spiritual emptiness that is producing it. You got all the toys, you got everything you want, and yet you still have this general sense of dissatisfaction, anxiety, and discontent. Much of it still only dimly conscious of the sense of spiritual emptiness that is producing it. Ancient sectarian conflicts, apparently unresponsive to the patient arts of diplomacy, have reemerged with a virulence as great as anything known before. People are dissatisfied with their, their economic standing or this rush towards materialism. So what do? They turn back to religion, but let's say not in a healthy way. Ancient sectarian conflicts, apparently unresponsive to the patient arts of diplomacy, have reemerged with a virulence as great as anything known before. Scriptural themes, miraculous phenomena, and theological dogmas that until recently had been dismissed as relics of an age of ignorance find themselves solidly, if indiscriminately, explored in influential media. People are turning to, they're grabbing at straws. In many lands, religious credentials, in many lands, religious credentials take on new and compelling significance in the candidature of aspirants to political office. Now, I'll admit, when I read that phrase, I knew what it meant, but I felt like this is something that could have been said a little differently, a little easier to understand. In other words, in many lands, religious credentials, the credentials of people aspiring to run for political office, all of a sudden their religious credentials become important. In many lands, religious credentials take on new and compelling evidence in the candidature of aspirants to political office. So now you're going to run for office. We want to know what your religion is. A world which had assumed that with the collapse of the Berlin Wall, an age of international peace had dawned, is warned that it is in the grip of a war of civilizations whose defining character is irreconcilable religious antipathies or aversions to other people's faith. A world which had assumed that with the collapse of the Berlin Wall, an age of international peace had dawned, that world is warned that it is in the grip of a war of civilizations whose defining character is irreconcilable religious antipathies or religious differences, if you will. Cannot be reconciled. Bookstores, magazine stands, websites, and libraries struggle to satisfy an apparently inexhaustible public appetite for information on religious and spiritual subjects. We're clamoring for this stuff. Perhaps the most insistent factor in producing the change is reluctant recognition that there is no credible replacement for religious belief as a force capable of generating self-discipline and restoring commitment to moral behavior. Nothing's better. The most insistent factor in producing the change. Remember that maybe we need to reiterate what that change was. Okay, first there was this again belief that we are not merely material, we are spiritual. But then there was this shift to this view of, no, wait a minute. Materialism is the most important thing. We are material. Everything is physical. We need to get more physical. We need to get more stuff. That's what we need to nurture, the material part of who we are. Well, now there's been another shift back to, an emphasis on spirituality, or at least that's happening. But, people are clamoring for information, and it seems that they don't know where to turn. Perhaps the most insistent factor in producing this change back towards a focus on spirituality, is reluctant recognition that there is no credible replacement for religious belief as a force capable of generating self-discipline and restoring commitment to moral behavior. Beyond the attention that religion, as formally conceived, has begun to command, is a widespread revival of spiritual search. There is now a revival of spiritual search, expressed most commonly as an urge to discover a personal identity that transcends the merely physical. The development encourages a multitude of pursuits, both positive and negative in character. So now we're searching, but it ain't all good. expressed most commonly as an urge to discover a personal identity that transcends the merely physical. We want to find out more about our spiritual selves. But that development encourages a multitude of pursuits, both positive and negative in character. On the one hand, the search for justice and the promotion of the cause of international peace tend to have the effect of also arousing new perceptions of the individual's role in society. So now we're looking at that. Similarly, although focused on the mobilization of support for changes in social decision-making, movements like environmentalism and feminism induce a re-examination of people's sense of themselves and of their purpose in life. So we are trying to, look towards people's, again, pursuit of spirituality. Now it has us looking at the importance of justice. I know if Daryl were here, he would have stopped me probably about 5 or 10 minutes ago. Okay. Do we have to roll the eyes? But yeah, it's just that to me, this message, the way that it flows, it's hard to find a place. Where do we stop? Where do we break? Because to me, again, there is a fluidity there, even in its complexity. There's a fluidity that makes it kind of hard. One idea leads to the next, And so that's why I admittedly chose to go on a little longer than we probably otherwise would have. Let me get set up here. Oh boy. Okay. This song is called I'm So Glad. People are running around every day, wondering why things are changing so fast. Don't know what to do, don't know what to say. Got so many questions to ask. From pillar to post, from coast to coast, confusion all across the land. A hidden word is what I like to say, but tell me, would you listen, my friend? And I'm so glad I know about the blessed beauty. So glad I know about the blessed beauty. I just I want to praise his name. So much depression, so much aggression. What's real and who can you trust? Is the purpose of life all struggle and strife? Does it end in ashes and dust? God really cares and he hears your prayers. If you'd only take time to pray. If you can't find the words, you can still be heard. He knows what you're trying to say, and that's why I'm so glad I know about the blessed beauty. So glad I know about the blessed beauty. I just I want to praise his name. Oh, so glad I know about the blessed beauty. I just I want to praise his name. People running around every day, wondering why things are changing so fast. Don't know what to do, don't know what to say. Got so many questions to ask. But if they take some time and see the signs, they see the sun shine through the rain. 'Cause God sent down his blessed beauty for is his name, and that's why I'm so glad, oh, so glad, oh, so glad. I know about the blessed beauty, so glad. I know about the blessed beauty. I wanna praise his name. Oh, for how long, for how long, for how long, for how long, oh, oh. For how long, for how long. Yeah. Maybe if you listen to the words of that song, you might know where the rest of this is going. Maybe not today, but in time. So, we're going to go ahead and finish up. There's actually only a brief portion here. I almost went ahead and just decided to finish, but I said, no, we'll take that break. So we were saying, on the one hand, the search for justice and the promotion of the cause of international peace tend to have the effect of also arousing new perceptions of the individual's role in society. Similarly, although focused on the mobilization of support for changes in social decision-making, movements like environmentalism and feminism induce a re-examination of the people's sense of themselves and their purpose in life. A reorientation occurring in all of the major religious communities is the accelerating migration of believers from traditional branches of the parent faiths to sects, S-E-C-T-S, to sects that attach primary importance to the spiritual search and personal experiences of their members. People are leaving their traditional religion and moving to other sects that attach primary importance to the spiritual search and personal experiences of their members. On the other end, at the opposite pole, extraterrestrial sightings, self-discovery regimens, wilderness retreats, charismatic exaltation, various New Age enthusiasms, and the consciousness-raising efficacy attributed to narcotics and hallucinogens attract followings far larger and more diverse than anything enjoyed by spiritualism or theosophy at a similar historical turning point a century ago. I looked at a few sources, and in the early 20th century, or actually early 19th century, there was this turn towards spiritualism and so forth. But a lot of those things also kind of over time, I'll say they just kind of dissipated. But again, consciousness-raising efficacy attributed to narcotics and hallucinogens attract followings far larger and more diverse than anything enjoyed by spiritualism or theosophy at a similar historical turning point a century ago. For a Baha'i, a proliferation even of cults and practices that may arouse aversion in the minds of many serves primarily as a reminder of the insight embodied in the ancient tale of Majnun, who sifted the dust in his search for the beloved Layli, although aware that she was pure spirit. I seek her everywhere, haply somewhere I shall find her. For anyone who doesn't know what that's a reference to, this is a reference to a writing called the Seven Valleys and the Four Valleys, in which there is this story told that a man is looking for his beloved, and he's searching endlessly for it. And Baha'u'llah uses this as a way as a metaphor for people looking for God and looking for that spiritual connection. So we'll continue this next week. It's actually longer than I had planned, but at this time, what we're going to do, as always, is we'll and hopefully have some people sharing some prayers, writings of your choosing, and we always like to start with our Camby's moment, followed by our Andy moment. And so, Camby's, do you have something to share with us today?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh Allah, Parvardigار, خطیات نفوس را افکن و سیئات ذلیلان را ست نما. تو واقفی، تو عالمی، تو مطلعی، تو آگاهی. ما گنهکاریم، ما خطاکاریم، ما غافلیم، ما زائلیم. تو عفوی، تو بزرگواری، تو آمرزگاری. إنك أنت التواب الستار.
Thank you, Camby's. Thank you. Andy, do you have something to share with us today? Andy sounds like he's pumping on chips there. He's not. He's just
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
You can hear me? Good.
We hear you.
Blessed is the spot and the house and the place and the city and the heart and the mountain and the refuge and the cave and the valley and the land and the sea and the island and the meadow where mansion of God have been made, and His praise glorified.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you. It's beautiful. Is there anyone else who would have a prayer or reading that you might want to share?
I'd like to say a prayer for mankind. My God, whom I worship and adore, I bear witness unto thy unity and thy oneness. and acknowledge thy gifts both in the past and in the present. Thou art the all-bountiful, the overflowing shower of whose mercy have rained down upon high and low alike, and the splendors of whose grace have been shed over both the obedient and the rebellious. O God of mercy, before whose door the quintessence of mercy hath bowed down, and round the sanctuary of whose cause loving kindness in its inmost spirit hath circled, we beseech thee, entreating thine ancient grace and seeking thy present favor, that thou mayest have mercy upon all who are in the manifestations of the world of being, and deny them not the outpourings of thy grace in thy days. All are but poor and needy, and thou verily art the all-possessing, the all-subduing, the all-powerful. Baha'u'llah.
Thank you, Pharaoh. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to share? Well then, at this time, this is that time where we always like to point out that, one moment, I'm trying to make a little adjustment here on my screen. Well, maybe I just won't make the adjustment. I'll just leave it as it is. For some reason, my Zoom stream is acting up a little bit, but we're going to go ahead and continue. As always, we always like to point out that this is a joint community effort. It's just not me and when Daryl is here, not just Daryl. It's a joint effort by several communities, primarily, admittedly, in the West Central Florida area. But yeah, Andy comes from closer to the East Coast, and Nini is able to share with us. She's from way down south, South Florida. But again, the most important thing is that it's a variety of people working together to share this word with you, to share this message with you. And we love doing it. We absolutely love doing it. But if you are someone who would like more information regarding the Baha'i faith, because the longer you listen to us, the more you'll find out, we do have a view that all religions are one. But as you can see, the main messages that we're bringing to you are coming from the writings of the Baha'i faith. And if you'd like to have access to those writings, certainly there are ways that you can get hard copy books, or you can just go to some websites. And these are those websites, okay? Baha'i.us, Baha'i.org. Locally, we have a very, very well-maintained, chock full of information website called Clearwater Baha'is, with an S, clearwaterbaha'is.org. And another one that Daryl always likes to point out is BahaiTeachings.org. And so if you, again, would like access to the primary sources that all of this information is coming from, in fact, even this book itself, usually when we're reading something, if you go to one of these websites, you can get the information, you can actually read it yourself and get access 100% free because it's all online. Or again, you can purchase a hard copy of the book. And right now, once again, this is the book that we are working on, One Common Faith. We consider this a devotion, but it's part devotion, part fireside, what we call firesides, in which we simply discuss information regarding the Baha'i faith and tell people about the faith. But it has also, over time, kind of developed into kind of a book club. Yeah, because over time we've read more, but we read a book, finish that book, of course, expound upon it, express our views on various portions of the book, and then we move on. And so when we're finished with this book, I'm pretty sure we'll be reading another book. But we'd like to say thanks to all of you who chose to join us, even if you're joining us after we, post this, because one of the good things about the Clearwater Baha'is.org website is they actually post this. They put it on YouTube, and you can get there that way. But I do want to say, Daryl, I hope get well soon. You know, there's been this run of illness that's not just affecting us, it's affecting a lot of people nationwide. So folks, stay safe and to the best of your ability, stay well. And if you're already sick, or if you get sick, get well. And as Daryl would always say, if you do nothing else this week, make sure that wherever you go, you share the love. O people of justice, be as brilliant as the light, and as splendid as the fire that blazed in the burning bush. The brightness of the fire of your love will no doubt fuse and unify the contending peoples and kindreds of the earth, whilst the fierceness of the flame of enmity and hatred cannot but result in strife and ruin. We beseech God that he may shield his creatures from the evil designs of his enemies. He verily hath power over all things. Let your vision be world embracing. Let your vision be world embracing. Let your vision be world embracing. Oh, oh. Watch over yourselves, for the evil one is lying in wait, ready to entrap you. Gird yourselves against his wicked devices, and led by the light of the name of the all-seeing God, make your escape from the darkness that surroundeth you. Let your vision be world-embracing, rather than confined to your own self. These are the words of Baha'u'llah. Be world embracing. Let your vision be world embracing. Let your vision be world embracing. Oh, oh. Folks, have yourself a good week, and hope to see you back here next week. And again, Daryl, get better, man. You all take care.
Thank you. Aloha.
Thank you.